The rain hadn't started yet, but Evelyn knew it was coming. The same way she had felt the storm building in her heart for months, a silent hurricane behind the fragile smile she wore each morning. The grand dining room of the Whitmore estate, usually a stage for celebrations, was cast in shadows that evening, with only the delicate flicker of birthday candles dancing atop a cake she had carefully chosen, still untouched, still whole, like the love she had tried to preserve. She wore a crimson silk gown that clung to her curves like memory to skin, hoping it would remind him of the woman he once loved, the woman he once looked at like she hung the stars. But Ackers, whose smile once brightened his darkest days, but his throat tightened, and the memory of Evelyn's tear-streaked face on her birthday held him captive. How could he focus on his mother's cold expectations when all he could see was Evelyn, standing there in the rain, vulnerable yet somehow radiant in her brokenness? Grayson's mind spiraled into fragments of the past, her gentle laughter as she cooked breakfast, the way she used to reach for his hand in moments of silence, and the way she looked that night, as though the world had crumbled beneath her feet. He didn't want to admit it, but the ache in his chest was real, twisting with guilt and confusion. Meanwhile, miles away in that quiet inn, embraced by the countryside's sleepy hills, Silas's voice softened as he shared a secret with Evelyn that he had carried for months like a precious, painful gem. "I saw you a year ago," he whispered, his blue eyes searching hers in the dim light. "At a gala, your husband ignored you, and you stood alone like a fragile bird forgotten by the world." Evelyn's breath caught, the memory unearthing feelings she thought she had buried beneath layers of disappointment and sorrow. Silas continued, "That night, I made a promise to myself. If ever you broke, if ever you were lost, I would be there to catch you." His words hung between them, heavy with possibility and hesitation. Was this fate, or merely a cruel coincidence wrapped in hope? Evelyn's heart wrestled with the uncertainty, wondering if her life was being pulled by unseen strings toward an unknown future, or slipping further into a familiar nightmare. Just as she grappled with these questions, the delicate balance of her new sanctuary was shattered by a revelation from the past. Madeline Cross, Grayson's ex-fiancée, the woman everyone believed had died in a tragic car crash years ago, stepped out of the shadows of Paris and into their lives once more. Madeline's return was like a sudden thunderclap on an otherwise calm day. Her presence, a living testament to secrets buried too deep to remain hidden forever. She carried with her whispers of deception, betrayal, and a truth that threatened to unravel everything Grayson and Evelyn thought they knew about their lives, their loves, and their losses. Evelyn's pulse quickened at the thought of Madeline's reappearance, sensing the storm it would bring, not just to Grayson's world, but to hers as well. The past, it seemed, had not finished rewriting their story, and the lipstick Madeline wore that day was not just a cosmetic choice. It was a symbol of the lies, seductions, and betrayals that awaited discovery. As Silas watched Evelyn struggle with the weight of this new reality, his protective instincts flared beneath the calm exterior he tried so hard to maintain. He knew the coming days would test her in ways no one had anticipated. Back at the mansion, Grayson faced the relentless pressure of his family's expectations and the haunting memories of the woman who had once been his everything, all while wrestling with the guilt of a decision that now felt irrevocably wrong. The delicate threads connecting Evelyn to his life were fraying, and with Madeline's return, those threads threatened to snap completely. Evelyn, caught between the painful silence of her past and the uncertain promise of Silas's presence, realized that love and betrayal were often two sides of the same coin, and that sometimes the hardest battles were fought not in grand gestures, but in the quiet spaces of the heart. The night stretched on, thick with secrets and unspoken truths, as the three souls, Grayson, Evelyn, and Silas, prepared to face a future that none of them could have foreseen. A future where every whispered lie and hidden tear would finally come to light. Grayson's world shattered again the moment the truth slammed into him like a merciless storm. Madeline, the woman he thought dead, had orchestrated his downfall with the cold precision of a master puppeteer, seducing him away from Evelyn while Helena, his mother, watched from the shadows, her plan unfolding perfectly to keep Evelyn out of the Hale legacy she so fiercely protected. The weight of betrayal crushed him as he confronted Madeline, whose voice was eerily calm as she revealed the depths of their deceit. "She loved you," Madeline whispered, her eyes gleaming with a mix of regret and triumph. "You destroyed something pure, something that could have been the light in your dark world." Grayson's knees weakened, his mind flooded with memories he had tried desperately to forget. The genuine laughter of Evelyn echoing through sunlit rooms. The way she danced barefoot in the rain, as if she was the very embodiment of freedom. The delicate curve of her smile that once chased away every shadow from his heart, now a haunting ghost buried beneath years of silence and mistakes. Meanwhile, far from the suffocating halls of the Whitmore estate, Silas prepared Evelyn for an evening that would mark a turning point in her fractured life. The charity gala was alive with chatter and shimmering gowns. But when Evelyn appeared in her breathtaking crimson dress, the entire room fell silent, captivated by the strength and grace she exuded, like a queen reclaiming her throne. Silas stood quietly beside her, a steady presence that shielded her from the storm of stares and whispers. Then, like a scene torn from a dream, Grayson appeared unexpectedly, his gaze locking onto Evelyn's with a mix of shock, longing, and undeniable regret. The crowd seemed to hold its breath as those two souls, once so intimately entwined and now painfully distant, shared a moment heavy with unspoken words and unresolved history. But Evelyn did not turn away. She faced him with unwavering eyes, standing tall and radiant, a woman reborn from the ashes of heartbreak and betrayal. The silence between them was louder than any argument, filled with the echoes of promises broken and the fragile hope for forgiveness. Silas's hand brushed lightly against hers, a silent vow that she was no longer alone. Grayson, overwhelmed by the sight of her strength, felt the sharp sting of loss pierce his heart deeper than any wound before. The gala lights blurred as memories flooded him, her soft voice, the way she had trusted him once, the way he had shattered that trust without a second thought. Yet in this charged moment, Evelyn was no longer the fragile woman he had left behind. She was a force, glowing with a newfound confidence that challenged everything he thought he knew about love and redemption. As the evening unfolded, conversations whispered of Evelyn's transformation, of how she had risen despite the shadows cast by those who once sought to break her. Madeline's shadow loomed, but so did the possibility of healing, of rewriting the story that fate had so cruelly penned. Grayson's mother, Helena, seethed with quiet fury from a distance, unable to reconcile the woman Evelyn had become with the one she had so long condemned. The delicate dance of past grievances and future hopes began to play out in that grand hall, where every glance, every gesture, spoke volumes of pain and promise. Silas, aware of the invisible battle raging in Evelyn's heart, vowed silently to protect her from the ghosts of yesterday. For Evelyn, the night was more than a charity event. It was a declaration of independence, a moment where she reclaimed her worth and proved that even the deepest wounds could bloom into strength. And Grayson, standing there amid the glittering crowd, realized that some loves, though buried, never truly die. They wait patiently for the courage to be reborn. Under a sky heavy with rain, Silas led Evelyn to a secret garden illuminated by thousands of twinkling fairy lights, their soft glow weaving magic through the droplets that fell gently around them, creating an atmosphere both tender and alive with quiet hope. The scent of roses mingled with the fresh earth, evoking memories Silas had kept close since the night he first saw Evelyn standing alone, a fragile figure surrounded by cold indifference, her soul quietly screaming for someone to notice her worth. Tonight was different. Tonight, the silence was broken not by words, but by the gentle touch of his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about seeing her truly for the first time. "You deserve to be seen," he whispered, his voice a soothing balm against the storm within her heart. And Evelyn felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble in the warmth of that declaration. They moved together, swaying to the rhythm of raindrops and whispered breaths, a slow dance where every step was a promise of healing, every glance an unspoken vow that this moment was theirs alone. No past, no pain, just two hearts learning to beat in sync again. Words felt unnecessary, even fragile, in the face of such profound connection. Instead, Evelyn let herself lean into Silas's steady presence, feeling the heaviness in her chest lighten as his hands held her gently, as if protecting something precious. "You saved me," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the rain, trembling with the raw honesty she rarely allowed herself to show. "No," Silas replied firmly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You saved yourself. I just found the pieces you left behind and helped you put them back together." It was a truth she hadn't dared believe, that her strength had always been inside her, waiting for the courage to rise, and Silas had simply been the light guiding her back to herself. When their lips finally met, the kiss was soft and pure, filled with a tenderness that erased years of hurt and replaced it with the sweet taste of redemption. It was not desperation, but hope, not pity, but profound love that bound them in that embrace, a moment of rebirth beneath the falling rain and shimmering lights. That night, Evelyn made a silent vow to live fully again, to reclaim the happiness she once thought was lost forever. And Silas chose her wholeheartedly, seeing not a broken woman, but a warrior whose scars told stories of survival and grace. Yet as dawn crept through the clouds, casting a fragile glow over the garden, the fragile peace was shattered by the arrival of a letter, its envelope heavy with the weight of unfinished business. Silas watched as Evelyn's hands trembled opening it, her eyes scanning the familiar, haunting signature. Grayson, the man she thought she had left behind, the man who had once owned her heart and shattered it, now reaching out across the distance with words that threatened to pull her back into a world of doubt and pain. In that moment, the garden's magic felt fragile and fleeting, a reminder that even in the midst of healing and newfound love, the past has a way of whispering its presence, challenging the future and testing the strength of hearts ready to break free. Evelyn sat alone in the quiet of her room, the letter from Grayson trembling in her hands, each word a dagger wrapped in regret and truth. The silence screamed louder than any confrontation could. Grayson's words peeled back the layers of deceit, revealing not just his weakness, but the heavy chains of a family legacy that had torn them apart. He confessed to being a pawn in his mother's cruel game, admitting that his decision to divorce her was a misguided attempt at protection. But all he had done was shatter her world, a world built on love, hope, and countless dreams. Tears blurred Evelyn's vision, but this time they weren't tears of longing. They were tears of release, of understanding that sometimes love isn't enough to conquer the shadows cast by power and pride. The pain wasn't about Grayson anymore. It was about reclaiming her own voice, her own identity from the ashes of betrayal. That night at the gala, the very place where society's whispers could make or break a woman, Evelyn stood tall, her crimson dress a symbol of rebirth and fierce determination. Facing Helena, the woman who had masterminded so much destruction, she declared with a voice steady and unyielding, "You tried to erase me, to bury me in silence, but I am not the woman who hides anymore." The room held its breath as Silas, ever her steadfast guardian, stood just behind her, a quiet strength that let Evelyn's light shine brighter. The media, hungry for truth, quickly unraveled Helena's carefully woven web of lies, exposing her for the manipulative force she truly was. Headlines screamed of scandal, of power misused, of a family fractured by secrets. Meanwhile, Grayson watched from the shadows, tears carving silent paths down his face, finally understanding that the woman he lost was no longer the fragile girl he once knew, but a phoenix risen, ready to soar without him. His last act of love was to let her go, to wish her freedom even if it meant a lifetime of regret. Evelyn's heart ached, not for what was lost, but for what she had found. Her own strength, her own future, and the quiet promise of a new beginning beside Silas, whose presence whispered of healing and hope. In that painful silence filled with shattered dreams and newfound courage, Evelyn realized that sometimes the loudest cries come not from words, but from the strength to walk away and claim a life truly hers. Evelyn sat alone in the quiet of her room, the letter from Grayson trembling in her hands. each word a dagger wrapped in regret and truth. The silence screamed louder than any confrontation could. Grayson's words peeled back the layers of deceit, revealing not just his weakness, but the heavy chains of a family legacy that had torn them apart. He confessed to being a pawn in his mother's cruel game, admitting that his decision to divorce her was a misguided attempt at protection, but all he had done was shatter her world, a world built on love, hope, and countless dreams. Tears blurred Evelyn's vision, but this time, they weren't tears of longing. They were tears of release, of understanding that sometimes love isn't enough to conquer the shadows cast by power and pride. The pain wasn't about Grayson anymore. It was about reclaiming her own voice, her own identity from the ashes of betrayal. That night at the gala, the very place where society's whispers could make or break a woman, Evelyn stood tall, her crimson dress a symbol of rebirth and fierce determination. Facing Helena, the woman who had masterminded so much destruction, she declared with a voice steady and unyielding, "You tried to erase me, to bury me in silence, but I am not the woman who hides anymore." The room held its breath as Silas, ever her steadfast guardian, stood just behind her, a quiet strength that let Evelyn's light shine brighter. The media, hungry for truth, quickly unraveled Helena's carefully woven web of lies, exposing her for the manipulative force she truly was. Headlines screamed of scandal, of power misused, of a family fractured by secrets. Meanwhile, Grayson watched from the shadows, tears carving silent paths down his face, finally understanding that the woman he lost was no longer the fragile girl he once knew, but a phoenix risen, ready to soar without him. His last act of love was to let her go, to wish her freedom even if it meant a lifetime of regret. Evelyn's heart ached, not for what was lost, but for what she had found. Her own strength, her own future, and the quiet promise of a new beginning beside Silas, whose presence whispered of healing and hope. In that painful silence, filled with shattered dreams and newfound courage, Evelyn realized that sometimes the loudest cries come not from words, but from the strength to walk away and claim a life truly hers. 1 year had passed since the day Evelyn had been found broken, lost in her own sorrow on that rain-soaked street, a day etched painfully into the corners of her memory. But now, as she stepped again onto the very cobblestones where her tears had fallen, there was a new lightness in her step, a quiet strength that came from the hard-won battles fought within herself, a transformation from the fragile woman who once crumbled beneath the weight of betrayal to a radiant queen who had reclaimed her own story, this time clad in a flowing white dress that caught the soft glow of autumn lanterns and shimmered with hope like freshly fallen snow under a winter moon. The chill in the air brushed gently against her skin, but it was nothing compared to the warmth spreading through her chest, a warmth born not just of love, but of forgiveness and self-acceptance, a warmth that spoke of healing, of new beginnings, of a future carved from resilience and courage. The street was alive with whispered anticipation as friends, neighbors, and strangers gathered under the amber glow of string lights and fading daylight, the golden leaves spiraling down in lazy, delicate dances, the air rich with the scent of wet earth and crushed foliage, and all eyes turned toward Evelyn and Silas as they approached the heart of the square, where so much had once seemed lost, but now was ready to be found again. Silas's presence beside her, unwavering, a pillar of steady devotion, his gaze soft yet intense, filled with unspoken promises and quiet reverence for the woman who had transformed before him like a phoenix rising from ashes. And as they reached the center of the gathering, the murmurs softened into silence, a collective breath held in reverence for the moment about to unfold. Silas slowly bent on one knee, his hand reaching into his coat with a deliberate gentleness that belied the storm of emotions swirling within him, pulling forth a ring that caught the fading light and fractured it into 1,000 sparkling shards, each reflecting the depth of his love and the countless moments he had cherished since finding her once more. "Last year," he began, voice steady but trembling slightly with raw emotion, "I found you broken, lost in shadows that no one should ever face alone. But today I see you, a queen, a woman whose spirit shines brighter than the fiercest star in the darkest night. Evelyn Carter, will you marry me? Not to mend the pieces I found, but to honor the whole magnificent woman you have always been. His words wrapped around her heart like a silken thread, pulling her from the past's cold grip into the warmth of a shared future. Evelyn's breath hitched as tears gathered unbidden in her eyes, shining like liquid gold in the soft light. Tears not of sorrow, but of triumph and healing. A flood of emotions washing away the last remnants of pain and fear. And with a voice that trembled with the weight of all she had endured and all she hoped to become, she whispered, "Yes," a single syllable heavy with meaning, a vow and a celebration intertwined. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers ringing through the crisp autumn air like a symphony of hope and renewal, as golden leaves swirled around them in a magical dance. The rain beginning to fall gently, soft droplets kissing her face and mingling with tears. But instead of chilling, the rain felt like a blessing, a baptism into a new life, a cleansing of old wounds. Silas rose, sweeping her into his arms, their bodies pressed close in a tender embrace that spoke of safety, of belonging, of a love earned through patience and truth. In that embrace, Evelyn felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by a powerful sense of peace and belonging she had never known was possible. As they shared their first kiss beneath the soft rain, it was soft and slow, a promise sealed in the language of hearts that had learned to trust again, a kiss that whispered of forever. The world around them blurred, the faces of the crowd fading into a backdrop of light and sound, as if the universe had narrowed to the two of them, suspended in a perfect moment where all things were possible. Evelyn's mind swirled with memories, the nights of loneliness, the whispered betrayals, the long hours spent wondering if love could ever find her again. Now replaced by this moment of clarity and joy, a living testament that pain does not have the final word. Silas's fingers traced gentle patterns along her cheek, grounding her in the here and now, reminding her that she was no longer the woman who once believed herself unworthy, but the woman who had reclaimed her dignity and her dreams. Around them, the crowd shared in the jubilation, their smiles and tears a mirror of the journey Evelyn had taken, a community woven together by empathy and hope. Friends who had seen her at her lowest now celebrated her at her highest. Strangers moved by the power of love's redemption. As the rain deepened, umbrellas popped open, but Evelyn and Silas stood bare to the sky, welcoming the cleansing downpour, a symbol of renewal and rebirth, of washing away past shadows and stepping boldly into a future crafted with care and courage. She caught Silas's eye and saw there the reflection of all she wished for: steadfast love, unwavering support, and a partner who cherished her for all she was and all she had become. The golden leaves continued to drift down, settling on the wet ground like delicate confetti, a natural celebration of this sacred union. Silas whispered softly, "Forever starts tonight," and Evelyn felt a swell of emotion so profound it nearly took her breath away, the simple truth of those words anchoring her heart to this new chapter. No longer a story of heartbreak or loss, their love had blossomed into something resilient and true, a beacon shining through the storms that life inevitably brought. As they pulled apart just enough to look at each other, the world seemed to exhale in collective joy, a quiet hush falling over the crowd as if granting a sacred pause to honor the beauty of this moment. Evelyn's hands found Silas's, their fingers intertwining naturally, the perfect fit like two halves reunited. And the promise they made was not just to each other, but to the life they would build together, a life defined by respect, trust, and boundless love. The park around them hummed with life, the distant laughter of children, the gentle rustle of trees, the soft murmur of the wind weaving through branches. And all these ordinary sounds took on extraordinary meaning in the context of this night. In her heart, Evelyn knew this was more than a proposal, more than a ceremony. It was a resurrection, a reclaiming of herself and her destiny. The pain of the past had carved deep lines in her soul, but those lines had been transformed into paths that led her here, to a love that was both gentle and fierce, tender and unbreakable. Silas's steady heartbeat against her chest was a reminder that she was never alone again, that she had been seen and cherished in ways she had only dreamed of before. As the rain softened to a drizzle, the night sky seemed to sparkle with possibilities, and Evelyn lifted her face to the heavens, feeling the rain kiss her skin like a benediction. She knew the road ahead would not always be easy. Life rarely is. But with Silas by her side, every challenge was a step closer to a shared dream. Every hardship softened by their unyielding bond. The golden leaves, the gentle rain, the applause of friends. All these were threads woven into the tapestry of their love story, a story that had risen from the ashes of heartbreak to soar with the wings of hope. And as the crowd slowly began to disperse, leaving Evelyn and Silas alone under the glowing lanterns and the fading rain, they stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Their hearts forever entwined in a promise made not out of need or pity, but out of deep, abiding love and respect for the woman Evelyn had become. A queen not just in name but in spirit,